Passion of Christ, which we've just read, is only read 2 times during the year, once on Palm Sunday and once on Good Friday. And it is, of course, the central story. It's the story that is the most important one, not the birth of Christ, but the death and resurrection of Christ. If Jesus had been born and died a regular death, probably wouldn't be here today. But because of this event, the passion and death and the resurrection, we find ourselves here over 2,000 years later commemorating this. It is the central and most important story of our lives and our faith as Christian people. The essential thing, really, it's all about Jesus. It isn't about us. It's all about Jesus, the essential thing today. But the other essential thing is it's all about us. This story begins with Jesus, as we've just heard it proclaimed in His Passion, and all of these things that we read and heard. But in the end, it's all about what we think and feel about it within ourselves, because this is where it has an impact. Sitting out there as a story, as elegant and as powerful as it is, and proclaimed or shown on film outside there as a story, it is indeed powerful. But it is meant to penetrate into us, into our hearts and minds, and make a huge and important difference in our life. So everything ends up on this page. What do you and I think about it? What do you and I feel about it? Now, a lot of people hear or read the story or watch a depiction of it on television, kind of like the story, The Passion of Christ, Mel Gibson, one of those, many different depictions, and they are horrified at what they see. They see a terrible, awful story of hatred and judgment, condemnation, and really assassination. And they find themselves horrified. I remember seeing The Passion of Christ shortly after it came out with a big group from my parish in Hawthorne, and I remember people around me sobbing because it was depicted so horrifically. They were terribly moved and pained by it. But there is a next level that perhaps many go to, and certainly in my youth as a child in the church, this was the spirit of the preaching and the spirit of what people seem to do. They went from this horrific story to huge guilt. Oh, Jesus, it is my sin that has done this to you. And it was all about them. They really left the story. Now it was all about them and their feelings of guilt. And that's where they processed it, and that's where they arrived and kind of stayed. I never heard anybody go to the next level, which I think is the one that really we ought to all arrive at. And it is simply this, that we arrive at a point of reading this story and feeling enormous gratitude. Enormous gratitude. That we would say, Jesus, thank you for such incredible love. Thank you for not just going to the cross, and He chose it. He really did. I mean, I'm convinced Jesus could have said, if He were wrapped up only in Himself and not in what He believed God was calling Him to preach, I think that He would have ran from the cross, escaped town, got out on the fastest horse. Or when His disciples said, Jesus, can't you tone it down a little bit? You're making a lot of enemies. He could have toned it down, but He didn't. He kept preaching what He believed. He knew where it was going to take Him. Anybody who's intelligent, who gets in everybody's face, knows where it's going to take you. It's going to take you to rejection and people hating you, condemning you, and doing everything they can to stop you, hurt you, even kill you. He knew it. But He went to the cross anyway. But the most extraordinary thing is how He went to the cross. You've heard me say it 1,000 times, so here's 1,001. There He is on the cross at the butt of so much rejection and hatred and negativity and jealousy and everybody mocking Him and everything that He has done. And He has every right to hate, but He loves. Father, forgive them all. They know not what they do. And His face, when He was faced with hatred and rejection, was a face of love and forgiveness. Now that's the power of the cross. And we ought not only to say, thank you, Jesus, for your willingness to die, but thank you for the way you died. Because in that, He calls us to take the cross into our heart and our life and allow it to reform and reshape us as a people who say, we believe in you, Jesus, we love you and your word, and we will follow you. So if we say all of that, it's not just the sufferings of life and the rejections. And by the way, if any of you, especially as adults, have never been rejected, I don't know how you escaped it. Even from your in-laws or outlaws, whoever. I mean, let's face it. Everyone in this life will experience rejection and jealousy and hatred focused at them. How will we do it? How will we walk through it? So as powerful as this story is, and it is indeed very powerful, it's really about what do you and I think about it, and what do you and I feel about it. Because where that intersects with this story, what we think and feel about it, that will tell us how much the passion of Christ is also the story of the passion of our own lives and our willingness to accept the cross, to accept the death and resurrection of the Lord so that we indeed may follow.